Revenge with Karen.
The fire alarm went off at 6:43 a.m. in Warehouse 12, but not because of an actual fire. The system short-circuited trying to reconcile two identical orders sent to the same vendor from two different departments. Double billing, double shipping. Nobody noticed until pallets started showing up with the same SKU stamped twice. One marked Priority CEO, the other Urgent Strategy Team. That's when I knew Atlas was coughing, not crashing, just coughing, clearing its throat in that quiet, ugly way before all hell breaks loose. But I'm getting ahead of myself. 2 weeks earlier, I was sitting cross-legged under my desk, a Red Bull in one hand and an Ethernet sniffer in the other, trying to figure out why Atlas had randomly decided that all January birthdays deserved paid time off. That wasn't a glitch. Was Carl in payroll trying to rig the system again so his twins could go to a Disney cruise? I fixed it. Silently, logged it, let it go. That was the deal. I kept Atlas breathing, and in return, the company let me live in peace. No icebreaker games, no forced birthday cards, no meetings that could have been an email. Just me, my machine, and a jungle of code that looked like spaghetti cooked by a blindfolded raccoon. Atlas wasn't pretty, but it worked. 'Cause I worked, I wasn't flashy. I wasn't loud, but I was necessary, whether they knew it or not. I was the one who patched the procurement loop after their digital transformation failed. I was the one who built the back end that let HR pretend they understood metrics. I was the one who designed the AI that rerouted late shipments before customers noticed. But no, I didn't speak at town halls. I didn't wear heels. I didn't bring up synergy. So the execs forgot I existed. Only the staff on the third floor even knew what I looked like. Gary in logistics called me the ghost in the wires. Heather in accounting once left me a post-it note that said, "Thanks for making the printer work again. You're the only reason I haven't stabbed Carl with a letter opener." I kept that one. Put it on my fridge. So yeah, maybe my company card had a few charges labeled cybersecurity course and 0-day mitigation workshop. And maybe I submitted them every quarter like clockwork. But no one questioned it. Not finance, not HR, not even the VP of Ops. Why? Because when Atlas hiccups, people lose bonuses. When Atlas fails, people lose jobs. When Atlas dies, well, we'll get to that. Now, listen, before we dig deeper into the corporate swamp I crawled through, let me just say this real quick. If you've made it this far, you're already better than 95% of the folks who listen, but don't hit subscribe or tap that like button. It's free, takes a second. And yeah, it really does help the team here keep digging up these twisted office tales for you. Appreciate it. Anyway, I kept my world simple, quiet updates at night. System reports rerouted through my console. Admin keys rotated weekly. And yes, I backed everything up, offsite, triple encrypted, and tied to biometric access. You think I trust Bob from sales with access to anything past his Outlook calendar? Hell no. The man once clicked a U1 a Tesla pop-up and bricked his own laptop. Twice. They called the system Atlas because it held everything: logistics, payroll, vendor timelines, internal ticket routing, budget syncing, shift rotations, compliance flags, even the damn snack orderings for the break room. If you unplugged me, the lights would still be on, but nothing would move. You'd have a Ferrari with no key, no gas, and the engine passworded behind 3 firewalls, and a smiley face sticker that said try again. But nobody asked about Atlas. They just assumed it worked, like magic. And I kept it that way until she showed up. Melissa. If smugness were a perfume, she bathed in it. Platinum blonde, manicured within an inch of her soul, and newly hired into HR, because nepotism is a ladder and her father-in-law owns the building. Rumor was she'd gotten kicked out of her last job for trying to reorganize the DEI budget into a wine bar fund. But here she was, smiling like she knew how any of this worked, walking the halls like she built the damn server racks herself. And on her third day, she asked my manager, "Why is this Jessica person expensing $1,800 on penetration testing frameworks?" To which my manager replied, "God bless him, because if she stops, our company gets penetrated, and not in a fun way." Melissa didn't laugh. She went straight to finance, straight to compliance, straight to the CEO, and I knew. I knew the minute I saw her print out one of my expense reports on pink paper and slam it on a conference table like she was dropping the Constitution. The countdown had started. 15 minutes, and the entire foundation would start to crumble. But I smiled anyway, because what she didn't know, Atlas only answers to me. The meeting was supposed to be about Q3 morale strategies, installation, a 2-hour PowerPoint about why a pizza party should make up for slashed bonuses. I showed up because the invite said mandatory, and I wasn't about to give HR a reason to pull some compliance rabbit out of a hat. I sat in the back like I always did, hoodie up, sipping black coffee that tasted like it had been filtered through an old sock. Nobody noticed me. Nobody ever did. Not until Melissa clicked to slide 7 and made my name the headline. "Let's talk about accountability," she said, smiling like a cat licking hot grease off a trap. The room stiffened. My name sat there in bold calibri, Jessica T. Ongoing noncompliance with expense policy. I blinked. She didn't look at me. Not yet. She was feeding off the power of silence. I conducted a review of recent expenses, Melissa purred, and found multiple charges from this employee, who, as far as I can tell, operates unsupervised. Items that were never approved by HR or finance. Courses, licenses, whatever she wants to call them. She turned to me finally. The room followed, neck by neck, like dominoes toppling toward a noose. "Jessica," she said, "would you like to explain why you've been using company funds for personal development without authorization?" I didn't answer. She didn't wait. "I've already cleared this with the CEO," she went on, rejecting her voice like she was auditioning for a courtroom drama. "Effective immediately, your employment is terminated. Please surrender your badge and log out of all systems. A security escort will be provided if necessary." You ever hear a room hold its breath? You could feel the temperature drop. The air went still, like even the molecules were waiting to see if I'd cry, scream, beg, throw a stapler. Melissa stood there with her hands clasped like a smug Disney villain, thinking she just solved the company's biggest problem. I stood up, calmly. No twitch, no tremor, just a slow rise and a glance around the room. Half the engineers looked like they'd swallowed their tongues. One guy from ops actually started typing with his laptop still half closed. I reached into my hoodie pocket, pulled out my ID badge, walked it to the center of the room, and placed it gently on the long, glossy conference table, next to the coffee carafe, like I was leaving a tip. Then I looked at Melissa, just once. "You have 15 minutes, I said. She blinked. "Excuse me? 15 minutes before your main job stops running." And then I walked out. No mic drop, no grand speech, just that line. She laughed, that forced little chuckle people do when they're unsure if they've been insulted. "Was that a threat?" she said, but I was already gone. Elevator door closing, the world going mute. Last thing I saw was her reflection in the polished chrome, all teeth and confusion. What nobody in that room knew, what Melissa never bothered to learn, was that Atlas didn't just run logistics. It was logistics. Payroll, dispatch, invoicing, deadline trackers, compliance alerts, supplier validation, the invisible skeleton of the company. And the part she just fired, that was the brainstem. I hadn't built it for power. I'd built it because it needed to work, because when something broke, they called me at 3 a.m. Because when the vendor database misfired, I fixed it before anyone noticed, because no one else could. But Melissa thought I was just another quiet drone slurping corporate dollars to fund a Netflix binge of tech jargon. She didn't realize those courses were enterprise-grade access tools, or that the licensing agreements were tied directly to my personal credentials. No multi-user logins. No admin override. Just one name, one fingerprint, mine, 15 minutes. That's how long the final key rotation would take to expire. It wasn't sabotage. It was a natural system timeout, and she had just deleted the only person with the map. But hey, at least the PowerPoint had glitter transitions. The elevator opened to the 3rd floor with a chime that felt louder than usual. Maybe it was just the silence in my chest. You ever hear your own blood moving? That low thrum behind your ears like a power line buzzing before a storm? That was me, not angry, not scared, just still. I stepped out and walked past the shared kitchen where Greg from accounting was microwave throttling another tuna melt. He saw me. Looked like he wanted to say something, then didn't. Smart man. My cubicle was still the same. Stupid little cactus half dead on the windowsill. A busted IT. Proud bobblehead I glued back together after the office holiday party massacre. 2 coffee mugs, both mine, both stained like they'd been through war. I sat down and pulled out my backpack, started packing. No tears, no dramatic slams of drawers, just the soft shuffle of pens and backup drives sliding into zippers. I heard whispers from behind the partition. Kelly's nervous hiss. Did she really get fired? Someone else mumbled. He's the only one who ever helped with that JIRA ticket mess. Another voice. I thought she was the system. No one stepped forward. No one asked. That's the thing about offices. They'll watch you burn through the glass, but they won't tap on it. Liability, I guess. Melissa strutted in 10 minutes later like she was grand marshal of a parade no one asked for. She was walking too fast, like she wanted everyone to notice how efficiently she just handled a problem. Heels clicked with the smug cadence of someone who just made a list and crossed out the top item in Sharpie. She did a full loop past the engineering pit, waved to someone, then glanced toward me without stopping. That's when I knew she had no idea, no clue what she'd done. She thought she'd just trimmed a budget, checked a compliance box, proved she had executive instincts. She probably thought HR would be printing her a commendation plaque by morning. Reached into the bottom drawer, pulled out the USB stick. It was black, no logo, no label, except one thing, a strip of masking tape across the plastic. In Sharpie, good luck. I set it gently on my chair cushion. Right in the center, no drama, no fireworks, just a tiny, silent landmine. I zipped up my bag, slipped on my jacket, and walked out with the kind of stillness you only learn after years of fixing broken systems in the dark. Didn't slam my locker, didn't look back. Just pressed the elevator button and waited, listening to the faint hum of Atlas humming in the walls. Atlas had 23 failsafes, each one tied to a trigger. One of those triggers was mine leaving the building badge scan without administrator handoff. The first domino. Melissa didn't know it, but she'd started a countdown disguised as efficiency. As I stepped into the elevator, Carl from payroll called out, "Hey Jess, wait. Are you?" The door slid shut before he could finish. Let him wonder. Let them all wonder. I descended in silence, the faint beep of each passing floor like the ticking of a quiet bomb. Not a big one, not explosive. Just the kind that gently takes out a foundation. By the time I hit the lobby, my access badge had already deactivated. I walked past security with a nod. Past the CEO's framed photo with the mayor. Past the motivational poster that said teamwork makes the dream work next to the fire extinguisher I'd once used to stop a server overheating in Q4 last year. Out the glass doors and into the parking lot. The air was crisp. Freedom smells like road salt and coffee grounds when you've been breathing recycled office air for 7 years. I didn't cry, didn't scream into the sky or kick over a trash can. I just sat in my car, pulled out my backup phone, sent one message, trigger acknowledged, key rotation engaged, clocks ticking. Then I drove away. No plan to return, no exit interview, no follow-up call. But that USB stick, that was a gift or maybe a warning. Depends on who picks it up first. It started with a missed shipment. Just one. A small fleet truck loaded with regional product samples meant for a VP summit in Chicago. Didn't leave the dock. The shipping label printed blank. The route manifest spit out a page filled with question marks and a single crying emoji. Warehouse manager flagged it as a printer error. Resent the job. Same thing. Then logistics tried rerouting through the backup queue. That's when the system told them the backup queue didn't exist, or rather, it existed last week. Now, nothing but a digital shrug. Whole platform redirected them to a deprecated error page I'd intentionally buried behind 5 layers of do not touch warnings. 2 hours later, payroll called down to IT. Not panicked, just annoyed. Hey, half our disbursements are in draft status. The other half are gone. Gone as in not submitted, not saved, not real. They tried to run the report again, got a timeout message. Rebooted the console, got locked out. Attempted to escalate. Atlas bounced back a cheery red banner, access denied. You are not the chosen one, that was one of mine. I'd written it half asleep during a patch cycle years ago as a joke. Nobody ever changed it. Until now, nobody had ever seen it. By hour 4, Melissa, still in heels and power stance, was holding a check-in with her change acceleration team, pretending nothing was wrong. Just a few hiccups, she said. Growing pains. Legacy system stuff. Her exact words were, let's not catastrophize minor glitches. That phrase would later be printed on mugs by several bitter staffers. Downstairs in IT, Brad was sweating into his gamer chair. He'd inherited my office, my systems, and the faint lingering scent of burnt coffee and stress. And now, his console looked like a cursed Minecraft server. Every dashboard blinked red. Every ping returned static. Every recovery attempt was met with a smug wall that said, admin validation expired. Annual override required. Good luck. Up in sales ops, a manager named Kira, sharp, skeptical, always half a second from quitting, started piecing it together. Didn't Jessica handle Atlas? Silence. I mean, wasn't she the admin? No one answered. Her intern, bless his Gen Z soul, whispered, I thought she was like a ghost. Like some AI thing. Kira stood up and walked straight to facilities. Asked for key to my old office. Found it locked. Called IT. No answer. Called legal. That's when the real panic started. Legal tried to access compliance reports for vendor contract audit due in 48 hours. Atlas responded with a spinning wheel and then spat out a gif of a raccoon setting a trash can on fire. That was definitely mine. Upstairs, Melissa was now watching her inbox light up like a Vegas slot machine. Subject lines included urgent, scheduling offline, payroll error exposure risk, FYI, legal panic. Still, she waved it off. Told her assistant to schedule a systems calibration task force for next week. Someone from procurement entered her office mid-sentence and said, we just got billed twice by a supplier that doesn't exist. Melissa blinked. That can't happen. Well, it just did. And the vendor ID is tagged Jessica TL7. Her mouth twitched, just slightly. She called IT. Brad didn't answer. He called the CEO's executive assistant. Hey, quick thing, she said, trying to sound casual. Just need to reset a few credentials tied to our automation system. You know, Atlas. There was a pause, isn't that? Jessica's system. Melissa's smile strained. No, I mean she worked with it, but it's a shared asset. Right? Longer pause. I'll ask legal, the assistant said, and hung up. By hour 5, people were starting to walk to meetings in person, sure sign that the internal scheduling AI had failed. Someone in finance whispered, should we call her? Melissa spun in her chair. Absolutely not, but her voice cracked. Just a hair. She was starting to realize the truth. Nobody knew how Atlas worked, not even Brad, not even the people who'd relied on it every single day. They just used it like a microwave or a toilet. They didn't know how it ran. They didn't care. Because Jessica had always kept it running. Till now. The first contractor showed up at 6:00 a.m. the next day, wearing a fleece vest with some forgettable tech company logo and holding a travel mug that probably said coffee equals debug juice. He looked like the kind of guy who only understood systems built after 2020. Melissa ushered him into the old server room like she was presenting the Ark of the Covenant. Jessica's files should be in there, she said, gesturing vaguely toward the blinking racks. He blinked back at her. You mean like documentation? Melissa smiled, wide and confident. Yes, the system files. Just patch around whatever's glitched, reboot if needed. He plugged in his laptop, tapped a few keys, then frowned. I'm gonna need root access. Melissa's smile held, but her tone shifted like spoiled milk. Just reset it then. He turned. Ma'am, I can't reset a system I'm not authorized to touch. Backends encrypted. The credential trees all tied to one account. Jessica TL7 admin root. Melissa stared at him. Just override it. You're the expert. He sighed like a man realizing his rate wasn't high enough for this kind of day. There's no override. Jessica didn't use a shared admin shell. She's the sole named cert. That's a closed chain system. Even the reboot commands bounce without signature verification. Melissa clenched her jaw. It's just software. No, it's architecture, he said. Custom. Self-locking. This is like trying to replace the pilot mid-flight when you realize the plane doesn't come with a steering wheel unless you were born as the pilot. He left 30 minutes later with a free-branded notepad and a haunted look in his eyes. By noon, they'd brought in 2 more firms. One sent a guy named Chris who kept saying bro to the servers. The other tried to brute force entry through an old maintenance port. Atlas responded by shutting down the entire non-essential VM cluster and sending out a Slack notification. Unauthorized activity detected. Sleep mode activated. Good night, Brad. Brad, still sweating in my old chair, nearly passed out. Legal was now involved. HR was now involved. Worse, so was the board. The CEO, up to that point blissfully unaware of the growing digital hurricane, dragged in when his calendar app failed to notify him of his own earnings call. He walked into an empty room, no prep notes, no CFO, and no script. Just 5 chairs, all spinning slightly. By the time he stormed into the operations war room, Melissa was halfway through her latest excuse. It's a legacy system, she said, arms crossed. Jessica didn't document her work. We were set up to fail. Bullshit, said the CTO, who hadn't spoken all year. Jessica was the documentation. We all knew that. You just didn't think it mattered. Melissa tried to pivot. She misused funds. The licenses were approved, said finance, sliding a file across the table. They were attached to valid project codes. They're all under budget. Most are even prepaid. She expensed $4,200 in cybersecurity modules. They're worth $40K in mitigation costs, said the InfoSec lead. The training kept us off 2 attack lists last year. The CEO rubbed his eyes. Where are the backups? Silence, are there backups? He asked again, slower. Brad cleared his throat. There are snapshots, but they're partial. The root access to sync the backup servers was also tied to her signature. Melissa, sweating now, tried to regain ground. Okay, but this isn't permanent. We'll get someone to patch it, rewrite it from scratch if we have to. The CTO snorted. It'd take 18 months, and even then we'd never replicate it. She didn't build a product. She built a spine. That's when the CEO ordered the internal audit, not of Atlas, of everything: vendor accounts, payment structures, infrastructure responsibilities, admin access logs, HR workflows, Melissa's approvals. Every node Jessica touched, cleaned, managed, or rerouted. And the more they looked, the worse it got. Turns out, Jessica didn't just build Atlas. She was Atlas. Every license tied to her name. Every workflow connected to her log key. Every bypass circuit linked through Jessica TL7. And now, that name didn't exist in the system anymore. Melissa had deleted it, or rather, thought she had. What she actually did was terminate the last viable key to the machine. That's when dread replaced denial. You could feel it in the air. The chatter died. The meetings got shorter. The CTO stopped arguing. And Melissa started closing her office door. Often. Because everyone had finally realized they didn't just fire a technician. They amputated their nervous system. By Thursday, the office smelled like desperation masked in citrus-scented Lysol. People stopped heating fish in the break room. The usual cliques dissolved into awkward hallway stares and whispered, "What do you knows?" Even the VP of strategy, who hadn't spoken to anyone without a LinkedIn following in 3 years, seen hovering by the server room with a half-eaten protein bar and a question he didn't know how to ask. The CFO called an emergency sync with finance. The kind where the word sync sounds harmless, but feels like getting dragged behind a truck. Pull every record on Jessica's expense reports, she said flatly, hair up, heels off, stress visibly calcifying in her neck. 5 analysts opened their laptops like they were detonating bombs. 45 minutes later, they weren't speaking in numbers anymore. They were speaking in warnings. First flag, Jessica's so-called unauthorized courses were not courses at all. They were enterprise licenses, multi-factor encryption modules, adaptive scheduling algorithms, proprietary vendor chain blockers, tools you couldn't even buy without approval from specific federal registries. One license tied to Atlas alone was worth more than half of HR's annual offsite budget. And Jessica purchased them at reduced nonprofit tier rates through back channels she'd established in year 2. All legal, all under budget, all signed off by Melissa's predecessor. Second flag, every single purchase was registered to Jessica TL7 and cross-referenced to internal project IDs that matched the core framework of Atlas. Third flag, the licenses were non-refundable, non-transferable, and region-locked to the original operator. Attempts to reroute or overwrite the credentials would trigger invalidation of the entire suite. That's when the panic started. Melissa, still operating under the delusion that this was just a PR flare-up, tried to spin it in her core team huddle. Okay, yes, maybe the tools were useful, she said, hand gestures wild. But she never told anyone what she was doing. That's non-collaborative behavior. Kira from Sales Ops spoke up from the back. She did tell you. It was CC'd. You replied with a thumbs-up emoji and never followed up. Melissa's eyes narrowed. Look, it's not about who said what, she tried again. It's about setting boundaries. We can't have rogue engineers building black boxes. She didn't build a black box, said the CTO, leaning into the room like the grim reaper of bad decisions. She built the only working box in the company. Finance walked in seconds later with a printed breakdown. Color-coded, tabbed, highlighted like a cursed school project. The top page read, Summary of expenditures flagged as unauthorized next line. Total amount, $18,342.72, and below that, net savings generated from those tools, $146,000 annually, not including crisis mitigation. Melissa reached for the packet, but the CFO pulled it back like a kindergarten teacher protecting the class hamster. Sit down, she said, and for the first time, Melissa did. Downstairs in compliance, HR had already started scrubbing their internal memos, trying to erase the Slack messages Melissa sent with champagne emojis after my termination. Too late. People had screenshots. One of them already hit a private Discord where half the staff was now gathered in digital mourning like I'd died in battle. "Jessica's not gone," someone posted. "She just ascended." I wouldn't have laughed. I would have been smug. Back in the exec suite, the audit files revealed one more gem. Jessica had prepared a full handover doc 6 months ago, 87 pages, step by step, labeled in case I get hit by a bus. It had sat unopened in Melissa's inbox for 184 days, unread, time-stamped, traceable. The CEO stared at it on the screen, lips tight, then turned to legal. "If we offer her a consulting contract, can we restore the licenses?" Legal shook his head. "The only way to unlock the infrastructure is if Jessica agrees to regenerate the certificates manually. In person, on site, with biometric keys." Silence. Melissa's voice, dry and brittle. "We'll just rebuild Atlas." The CTO laughed. It was sharp and humorless, and carried the weight of 7 years of watching someone hold the company together while the rest of them collected bonuses for her invisible work. Could throw 10 million at 5 vendors and still not replicate what she did. The CEO stared down at the printout again. Melissa's entire crusade, her so-called cleanup operation, wasn't just flawed, it was fatal. They hadn't just fired the system architect. They had exiled the only person keeping their ship from capsizing. Jessica wasn't rogue. She was the last competent person in a room full of people who thought blinking lights meant everything was fine. Now the lights were out, and Jessica, she wasn't answering her phone. It started with the CEO missing a lunch. Not just any lunch, his quarterly steak and scotch with the board chair and 2 major investors. The kind where one wrong sip could tank a funding round. His assistant swore she'd booked it, said it was in the system. But when he checked his calendar, it was blank. Not just that appointment, everything was gone. Birthdays, board reviews, site visits, even the recurring vision alignment sync he pretended to care about. Wiped clean. Like someone took an eraser to his professional identity. He brushed it off at first. Glitch, sync delay, probably a time zone thing. Then his phone started buzzing. Warehouse 7 had just canceled a full delivery, $1.3 million in product, because the system flagged the recipient as non-verified. The client had confirmed twice, but Atlas wouldn't greenlight the dispatch. Reason: authorization token expired. The status page showed a looping hourglass and one mocking sentence: credential mismatch. Please contact your system administrator. They didn't have a system administrator anymore. The shipping lead tried manually approving the release, but the command chain ran straight into a locked node signed Jessica TL7 override required. Capital letters, permanent, no backdoor, no call center escalation. Back in the executive suite, CFO tried to bypass Atlas through a mirrored portal she barely knew how to access. It rejected her instantly. "Error code, you are not authorized to authorize." She paled. "Call her," she said to the CEO. "I already did," he muttered. Straight to voicemail, text her. "I did, twice." Third time got the read receipt, then nothing. Maybe she's flying, maybe she's done with us. At 3:17 p.m., the company's oldest client, major distributor with contracts dating back to the fax machine era, called screaming. Their automated restock had failed. Their delivery had been flagged as fraudulent. Their invoice queue returned gibberish. Their rep had spent 2 hours in a chat loop that eventually ended with, "Please direct questions to Jessica." You know which one? That was the final straw. They demanded immediate compensation or they'd activate the breach clause. The CEO dropped his phone, not metaphorically. It slipped from his hand and hit the carpet with a dead thud. In the silence that followed, Melissa peeked into his office, pale as bone. "I think we need to talk," she said. He didn't look up. He was staring at the glowing error message on his laptop. It was cycling through a series of animations: birds flying into windows, cats unplugging routers, a person banging their head against a keyboard. All accompanied by the phrase, "Everything's fine. Just removed your spine." He slammed the lid shut. "You said this was manageable," he hissed. Melissa stepped in fully, voice cracking. "I didn't know she had that kind of control. She built the system. You fired her without checking how it worked. I thought she was just, you didn't think." She shrank in place. "I'll call her," she offered, voice thin. The CEO didn't respond. So she walked back to her office, heels silent now, and closed the door. The first time since this whole thing started, Melissa dialed Jessica's number. The line rang, and then finally a click. But it wasn't her voice, it was an automated recording. Jessica's voice, once soft and tired and half buried under corporate exhaustion, now clear as crystal. "Hi, you've reached Jessica Taylor. I'm currently unavailable. If this is regarding Atlas, please refer to the documentation provided at the time of handover. Pause. A chime. If you're calling from West Aegis Corporate, press 2. Melissa pressed 2. New message. I'm sorry. Due to recent events, I am no longer affiliated with West Aegis. All inquiries can be directed to your newly appointed systems lead. Oh, wait, you don't have one. Beep. The call ended. Melissa dropped the phone onto her desk, hands shaking. That's when her email pinged. From Jessica Taylor, subject, clock still ticking. Attachment, a screenshot of the Atlas control panel. Status, auto-archival phase initiated. Redundant access expires in 4 hours, 42 minutes. No text, no greeting, no signature. Just one postscript. 15 minutes was generous. Melissa walked back to her father-in-law's office and knocked. He didn't answer. He was inside, breathing heavy, pacing slow, whispering a line over and over. We should have left her alone. Jessica's personal phone buzzed on the corner of her desk. She didn't flinch, didn't even glance at it. She was halfway through reviewing a clause in the acquisition agreement when she'd flagged for legal to rewrite in less vague language, something about control rights post-integration. The document rested between a calm mug of green tea and a manila folder labeled Confidential, Transition Timeline Phase 2. The phone buzzed again, then again, and again. She let it go. The fourth ring, the voicemail picked up, her voice level and clear. Hi, Jessica here. I'm currently in a meeting. Please leave a message. If this is regarding Atlas, please be advised that administrative access has officially lapsed. No further support is available. Beep. Then, silence. Back at West Aegis, the CEO lowered his phone and stared at it like it had personally betrayed him. She's ignoring us, he muttered, though it sounded more like a prayer than a statement. Boardroom was silent. CFO pale, CTO grim, legal twitchy. Melissa had left the building 2 hours ago and hadn't been seen since. Her parking spot sat empty like a crime scene. Someone claimed they saw her crying in her car in the garage, screaming into a steering wheel that had no solutions. The CEO tried again, texted, emailed, even tried her old work address out of desperation. Nothing, because Jessica had moved on. She wasn't hiding, wasn't licking wounds, wasn't plotting revenge in a dark basement like some disgruntled IT trope. She was elevated, new office, new badge, new title. Principal Systems Consultant, Atlas Transitions Division. Her client? West Aegis's biggest account. The one who'd nearly walked after the botched delivery last week. The one Melissa once called low maintenance. The one Jessica had been quietly advising for months, off the record, about what to do when a company lets its own infrastructure rot behind HR vanity projects. That client hadn't walked. They'd run right into Jessica's waiting hands. Not out of spite, not for revenge, because she was prepared. She knew Atlas couldn't be replicated, but she could teach others how to avoid building new systems on old egos. Her job now, helping companies escape vendors like West Aegis, helping them migrate, helping them modernize, helping them recognize the red flags before it's too late. She didn't burn bridges. She replaced them. She didn't torch the servers. She built better ones. Jessica scrolled through her inbox, calmly flagging non-urgent emails and signing off on document approvals. Legal had cleared the acquisition, pending the final signature, her signature. All she had to do was click. She reached for the stylus, tapped her name in digital ink, and watched as her inbox pinged again. This one from an address she hadn't seen in years. The old IT director who left 3 years ago, right before Melissa arrived. Subject, heard what happened. Just wanted to say, you always deserved more. They had no idea who they were dealing with. She smiled, not wide, not smug, just enough. She leaned back in her chair, the city skyline humming behind her. The client's CTO would be arriving in 15 minutes to finalize the system's review, probably shake her hand and call her a lifesaver. Maybe offer her stock options, maybe more, but Jessica didn't care about that. She cared that she built something that lasted, something resilient, something hers. She didn't need to go back. They could keep their broken machine and their blinking error screens and their panicked HR memos. She had new systems to build, new companies to rescue, a new legacy to shape. And the voicemail, the calls, the desperate outreach. Let them ring. She wasn't just done. She'd already started something better. At exactly 5:01 p.m., every executive at West Aegis, Melissa included, received the same email. Subject line, Atlas Final Certification Purge Executed Reference ID. Jessica certified. The message was short, clinical. Not a single wasted word. Per contractual auto-expiry protocol, Root admin key Jessica certified has now been fully purged. Recovery requires physical reauthorization from the original certifying agent. This process is irreversible. There was no logo, no contact number, no reply option. Attached was a single PDF. Melissa opened it and immediately froze. It was a scanned copy of the HR memo she had written, her own memo dated 2 weeks prior. Subject line, termination, Jessica Taylor, but this version had red arrows drawn all over it. Hand-marked annotations, highlights, margin notes. Each arrow pointed to a violation, a legal misstep, a breach of internal protocol, failure to document process transfer, improper access revocation, negligence of systems audit. At the bottom of the memo, beneath Melissa's electronic signature, Jessica had written one final note in crimson red text: termination executed without credential transfer. Compliance breach confirmed. Melissa's hands were shaking. Her screen went blurry. Email pinged again, this time from legal. What is this? Why wasn't protocol followed? Where's the fallback admin? She didn't answer. She couldn't, because just then Slack lit up. It wasn't a message from someone, it was from the system. Atlas, the last breath of a ghost they tried to erase. Everyone saw it, all staff, all departments, no filters, no permissions. At everyone, good luck. You had 15 minutes, nothing else. The room went dead silent. The CFO stood up, slowly backed away from her chair like it might explode. The CTO dropped his tablet. The CEO sat down without meaning to, his eyes fixed on the monitor, his mouth barely moving as he whispered, "She warned us." The message sat there, hovering on every screen like smoke. There was no retaliation, no explosion, no viral campaign, just a single Slack message. A gentle blade slid between the ribs of a dying giant, the sound of every heartbeat in the room realizing, too late, that the one person they had underestimated wasn't bitter. She was better. Jessica hadn't just walked away. She walked through them, and when she left, she took the gravity with her. No one laughed, no one spoke, because everyone knew this wasn't sabotage. This was subtraction. You're the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.